Swift and the meatpackers, like all of Chicago's entrepreneurs, depended on the railroad. In 1877, in the midst of a depression, railroads cut workers' salaries up to 40%. Just 12 years after slavery was abolished, workers considered themselves wage slaves. They went on strike spontaneously from West Virginia to Chicago.
These workers were feeling that their means of production were being taken away from them, that they had no control over those railroads, that they had no control over their lives. And so that struggle in 1877 was central to a new understanding by working class people what this new capitalism meant for them.
And now the New York Times and the Tribune are pointing out the predominant issue is no longer the race issue, it's the labor issue. Labor and capital, the relationship of labor and capital. It's still a property issue like slavery. Who controls property? When I control a concern, do I control the employees as my property? Are they working on my property and hence have no rights to bargain with me for better conditions because it's my property? And so it raises all these kinds of issues.
The threat to property was more acute in Chicago because of sympathy strikes organized by socialists. Workers emptied factories and packing houses. On July 26, 1877, Bohemians, socialists from what is now the Czech Republic, left their jobs in the lumberyards to battle the police. They demanded an 8-hour day and restoration of wages. The Tribune described the mob stoning the police as Bridgeport and Stockyard plug uglies. The police stormed a meeting where German cabinet makers were negotiating peacefully with their employers, clubbing and firing at will. Marshall Field loaned his retail store delivery wagons to the police to move their riot squads. He later headed a citizens association which bankrolled 4 Napoleon cannons and a Gatling gun for the police. Businessmen urged General Phil Sheridan, stationed in Chicago after the Civil War, to call in federal troops who were fighting the Sioux in the Dakotas.
There's a fear of revolution. There's a fear of socialism. There's a fear of the spread of anarchical ideas in the city. There's a fear that capitalism itself is fearfully vulnerable. This is in the middle of a Great Depression, and maybe the system's not quite working the way it should. New wealth has arisen, a new class of plutocrats. This is a real watershed moment in American history.
There had been a mass meeting before the violence began. The chief speaker was a typesetter at the Chicago Times, a socialist named Albert Parsons. His ancestors had arrived on the second voyage of the Mayflower. He had fought for the South in the Civil War.
After the war, he says in his autobiography, he felt so guilty about fighting to retain slavery because he had been brought up by a black woman, a slave, a black nanny, and he claims that he went to her personally and apologized. Became very active in Texas politics in the 1860s on the side of the radical Republicans, which are pushing for the 14th and 15th Amendment to the Constitution, giving blacks civil rights and the right to vote. They're fighting the Klan.
He married a woman of mixed race, a black woman, Lucy Parsons. He had to get out of Texas because of that, and he came to Chicago. And Chicago, of course, was on the very cutting edge of this industrial change and this industrial revolution. All the questions that were bubbling up inside of Parsons were also bubbling up inside the city. So he was really already beginning to question capitalism.
Parsons saluted the Grand Army of Labor and asked workers to join his party to secure state ownership of industry. If the capitalist engages in warfare against our rights, he said, then we shall resist him with all the means that God has given us. The next morning, Parsons was fired from the Chicago Times and escorted by the police to a meeting of businessmen at City Hall.
Albert Parsons was taken to City Hall, and was cross-examined by the businessmen and asked who he was, what he was doing in town, his background, and things of that kind.
They questioned him, and the police chief took him aside and said, "They're going to string you up if you don't get out of town." And Parsons says, "Who's they?" And the police chief said, "The Board of Trade."
That night, Parsons went to the Tribune to discuss the strike with his typesetter friends. "I came in here as a gentleman," Parsons told the guards who grabbed him, "and I don't want to be dragged out like a dog." One of them said, "Shut up, or we'll dash you out the windows on the pavements below." Another put a pistol to my head and said, "I've a mind to blow your brains out. Now go." I felt alone, absolutely without a friend in the world, Parsons recalled. This was my first experience with the powers that be, and I became conscious that they were powerful to give and take one's life. The social revolution had begun, he wrote, and must be settled, one way or another. After he was fired from the Chicago Times during the uprising in 1877, Albert Parsons abandoned socialism and began to publish The Alarm, an anarchist pamphlet. He shared an office with another anarchist, August Spies, a German immigrant who ran a small furniture company and published the German-language Arbeiterzeitung. When Frank Stauber, a German-born socialist, lost his race for alderman in 1880 because Irish ward bosses stuffed the ballot boxes, many Germans turned against the system. The holiest institution of the American people, a German newspaper fumed, had become a miserable farce and a lie.
Large numbers of them pulled out of the Socialist Labor Party, and they aligned themselves with the International Working People's Association, which was an anarchist-affiliated organization. And they began to advocate a violent revolution using dynamite. Now, Parsons and other people blamed this on the capitalists at the time. In fact, it wasn't the capitalists, it was the local ward politicians.
And they were very demonstrative in their rhetoric. I mean, they really, went straight at him and called for assassination.
And they felt that if you destroyed the state, perhaps with a single act of violence that would cause the working people to rise up, capital would just crumble and a new society would take shape. A society of communes, as they put it.
August Spies used to really make Marshall Field and Pullman angry because he used to go to the same restaurants that they went to, and he'd make sure he sat near them, and they learned to recognize who he was, and it would just spoil their whole dinner that he was sitting at the table next to them.
The Sunday picnics that Chicago's Germans enjoyed became more than picnics. They were a chance to spread the word and recruit. One Sunday, anarchist leader Samuel Fielden spoke of the wonders of a new invention, dynamite, which, he said, science had placed within the reach of the oppressed. On Thanksgiving Day, 1884, the anarchists unveiled their new symbol. The black flag of hunger and death joined the red flag of social change. Playing the anthem of the French Revolution, the Marseillaise, they began a march which took them past Potter Palmer's elegant hotel, the Palmer House. then on to the Prairie Avenue mansions of the capitalists, who had deprived them, their leaflets said, of every blessing during the past year. Every worker, every tramp must be on hand to express their thanks in a befitting manner.
They're marching down Prairie Avenue, okay, the very citadel of capitalism. And it's all right to march on a plant, but they're right at the homes of the capitalists. Never happened anywhere else like that. They collect what they call hobos in there, but they're anarchists as well. And they're going up and they're ringing the doorbells. And of course, nobody's answering the doors, but they're screaming that they want bread or power. There's just never been a direct demonstration quite like that.
Albert Parsons read from the Epistle of St. James. Your riches are corrupted, your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust shall eat your flesh as it were fire. We do not intend to leave this matter for the Lord, he concluded. We intend to do something for ourselves. They approached the Prairie Avenue mansion of Marshall Field, whom Parsons had attacked for discriminating against immigrant women shopping in his store. Our international movement is to unite all countries and do away with the robber class, Samuel Fielden told the marchers. Prepare for the inevitable conflict. They marched on the Prairie Avenue mansion of George Pullman.
Pullman was absolutely horrified with the sight of poor people walking up his street and ringing his doorbell. The next day, he went to his attorney, Wirt Dexter, and he said, I want you to get this guy Parsons.
They were Catholic. They didn't speak English. They spoke German. They drank beer on Sundays. They went to saloons on Sundays. They were a threat. They were totally alien to this American Protestant way of life.
They marched on the Board of Trade when it opened an elaborate new building on LaSalle Street the next year. The Board of Thieves, they bellowed, stood for starvation of the masses, privileges, and luxury for the few. One in the crowd yelled, "Blow it up with dynamite!" To Chicago's business leaders, these were not idle threats.
They're reading in newspapers about assassinations abroad. There are people being killed in Europe, including Tsar Alexander at this time. The movement is extremely strong in Germany. And now their speakers are coming from Germany to agitate. So they know the anarchists are serious.
The better classes are tired of the insane howlings of the lowest strata, warned General Phil Sheridan, and they mean to stop them. On May 1st, 1886, the anarchists did something unusual. They teamed up with the mainstream labor movement, disgruntled railroad workers, packing house butchers, bohemian socialists. Albert and Lucy Parsons led 80,000 workers down Michigan Avenue as part of a nationwide strike for labor's big issue, an 8-hour day. With its mayor Carter Harrison supporting it, Chicago became the center of the strike.
8 hours a day for work, 8 hours a day to sleep, 8 hours a day to play in a free America.
The anarchists didn't lead the 8-hour movement, but they attempted to commandeer it. August Spies felt strongly that this was a demand that was in effect a revolutionary demand, even though it didn't openly say so. It was a demand that could not be won under the existing circumstances. And it was a demand that would inevitably lead the 8-hour movement into a revolutionary situation under the leadership of the anarchists.
They told capitalists, your function in life is to die. We're going to get you. We're going to bomb your factories. We're going to tear apart your system. The general strike's going to bring down capitalism. You'll be shot afterwards.
Streetcar lines are shut down. The city is shut down. This is a general strike. And there's a tremendous amount of tension. The workers, of course, were winning. You know, the 8-hour day in the packing houses.
Workers struck the packing houses on May 2nd. The Packers, Chicago's largest employers, conceded to an 8-hour day, the same pay for 8 hours that workers had gotten for 10. What happened May 3rd at the McCormick Reaper Works got the anarchists involved in another labor dispute and ignited the most sensational labor incident of the 19th century. Cyrus Hall McCormick, the Reaper King, had died in 1884. A floral reaper adorned his casket. His last words were work, work, work. His son mechanized the plant. Blades that used to be forged by hand were now forged by steam hammer. This threatened the skilled iron workers. In May 1886, they'd been on strike for months. McCormick hired scabs to take their place.
The McCormick strike was over a long-standing dispute that had begun before the 8-hour day had begun, that turned on the attempt of McCormick to mechanize the whole process of iron molding, and thereby to get rid of one of the strongest unionized forces, the Iron Molders Union. And these were largely Irish. And so there was a very bitter struggle that was going on at that time. Some of the Bohemian lumber shovers and other socialists and anarchists had gone up there in solidarity with the McCormick workers. August Spies had made a very militant speech.
When the whistle blew to end the shift on May 3rd, locked out strikers attacked the scabs as they left the plant. Police rushed in to protect the scabs. They killed 2 of the striking workers.
Spies witnessed this from behind a boxcar. He saw it. And he ran back to his office on Wells Street, and he wrote a protest. And he left it on the desk and said, I want this circulated the next morning. And he told them to put a banner on it. Well, to his great dismay, the banner that somebody put on it was revenge, which was the last thing that should have been put on it, because he didn't mean it to be that kind of thing.
A second circular called for a rally the next evening at Haymarket Square. Haymarket Square was an open-air market by day. By nightfall on May 4th, the pushcarts were gone. Chicago's popular mayor Carter Harrison was there and made certain the crowd saw him. It would ensure order.
It was a fairly peaceful rally. I mean, the anarchists were saying things that they always said, you know, death to the owner class, revolution. Mayor Harrison rode up and everybody yelled, huzzah, huzzah, Mayor Harrison, you know, and he took his hat off and he waved it to people. And it was a little campaign thing. And he stayed at the back. And the police captain, Captain Bonnefeld, came up and said, what should we do with this rabble, sir? And he said, basically, let them speak. They've said many worse things than they're saying tonight. And there's no one here. And he said, I'm going to go home. And he goes home.
Captain Bonfield dismissed most of his men. Not all. The last speaker, Samuel Fielden, remembered the men shot at the McCormick Works. The law is framed for your enslavers, he said. Throttle it, kill it. Do everything you can to impede its progress. Bonfield considered this inflammatory. He ordered the police to march. Fielden was winding down. He that has to obey the will of another is a slave. Can we do anything except by the strong arm of resistance? War has been declared on us. People have been shot. Defend yourselves. No one noticed the man lurking in the shadows. Any animal will resist when stepped upon. Are men less than snails or worms? In the name of the state of Illinois, I command you to disperse, the police captain said. But we are peaceable, Fielden protested. Seven policemen were killed, mostly by friendly fire. The Chicago Times called the workers ragtag and bobtailed cutthroats of Beelzebub from the Rhine, the Danube, the Vistula, and the Elbe. Labor's largest paper called them wild beasts. The respected Albany Law Review called them long-haired, wild-eyed, bad-smelling, atheistic, reckless foreign wretches.
It was front-page news around the world. Remember, Chicago is the world's window into the future. People from around the world really saw it as what city life was going to be like for them, perhaps 10 or 20 years down the road. And when you got into the labor violence, what appeared to be proletarian riots, it was very frightening to people in many places around the world.
Throughout the nation, Americans were almost unanimous in favor of the utmost repression of the anarchists. There was a belief that American civic institutions were being threatened to their core. Foreign-born workers under the leadership of anarchists were seen to be a threat of the first order.
The very next day, martial law was declared in Chicago. A law is passed saying that no more than 2 people can be standing on a street corner to talk. If there's 3, you can arrest them. And homes are entered without search warrants. All the union newspapers are closed down. Literally hundreds of labor leaders are put in the different city jails.
After Haymarket, the city went crazy. This is a real red hunt, and it's the first American red hunt. They know that everyone they're rounding up is not an anarchist. They're rounding up labor agitators. They're out to crush the labor movement, which is the threat here, more than the anarchists. They can handle them. They can hang them and shoot them. In many ways, this is, for them, an opportunity. They can paint them with a brush of anarchism and go after them like that.
They didn't belong to the human race, poet Carl Sandburg, a child at the time, would recall. They seemed more like slimy animals who prowl, sneak, and kill in the dark. I didn't hear anyone in our town who didn't so believe. 8 were charged with murder and conspiracy. They included Albert Parsons, who had fled to Wisconsin, but returned.
And here's a man who's rather naive, don't you think? He sits up there in Wisconsin and he says, well, this is America, and the justice system will prove me to be right. And so I'll come down, I'll talk about anarchism, I'll explain that I was 5 blocks away in a tavern with my wife, and the jury will, let me go.
Judge Joseph E. Gary presided over the trial.
Well, there was such fury about the case that there was no effort made to find a fair jury. The bailiff was sent out to find people and bring them in as potential jurors. And of course, he found people who were deeply prejudiced. That wasn't hard at the time. And I'm sure the bailiff rejected anybody who showed any sympathy.
One prospective juror dared to say he wanted to listen to the evidence before he decided whether they were guilty or not in the cross-examination, whether he would be on the jury or not. And he was not accepted as a juror. He went back to his job downtown the next day and was fired by his employer because he did not automatically assume, even before hearing the testimony, that they were guilty.
That mere fact that they were even being tried at all when the bomb thrower wasn't known is just a travesty. How can you even prosecute somebody for conspiracy if you don't have any evidence that they were together with the person that threw the bomb or that committed the crime?
Only 2 of the anarchists were at the scene, and they were both on the so-called podium in full public view. Somebody threw that bomb, but nobody had any idea who threw it.
Anarchy is on trial, the prosecutor said. Gentlemen of the jury, convict these men, make examples of them, hang them, and you save our society. The verdict was guilty. The sentence, death by hanging. 3 asked for clemency and got life in prison. 1 blew himself up in jail with a cigar bomb. A former Tribune editor, Henry Demarest Lloyd, began a national campaign for clemency. Illinois' governor said he would support it if the businessmen did. Banker Lyman Gage gathered 50 of the business elite to argue that clemency would improve labor relations. He seemed to sway them. But they feared to cross Marshall Field, Chicago's most influential businessman, who was opposed.
The great industrialists all, I think, woke up, at least at times in the middle of the night, in a cold sweat and worried about revolution. It was impossible not to entertain the potential for serious social unrest and indeed political and economic revolution in this country when the rewards of this extraordinary moment of change in capitalism were being so unequally distributed. And they knew it. Field knew it. Pullman knew it. Swift knew it. Armour knew it. They couldn't not know it. And that was a very scary possibility for people like Field.
You have to remember that this is a period of time that was still in the shadow of the Civil War. And people felt that if you didn't take a hard and firm line, as had been taken by Lincoln and the Republican Party against the slaveholders, if you didn't take a hard and firm line against threats to property, that this sort of thing would be repeated. And I can't help but think that Marshall Field felt that this was a great test of leadership.
You couldn't have invented an enemy that is more maniacal and more threatening to Field than the anarchist movement. Field thought, property is sacrosanct. I formed this business on my own. I worked up from stock boy. It's mine. They have no right to tell me how to run it. And certainly they're not going to tell me that they're going to dynamite it to death. Field and the elite control the banks and they control the business establishment. They've lost control of politics. Now are they going to lose control of their own businesses?
It caused a furor throughout the world. People saying, don't hang these guys, commute the sentence. And letters came from George Bernard Shaw from Tolstoy, I believe. Do not execute them. But there was one industrialist who was adamant, and that was Marshall Field I, the merchant prince. He said, in effect, hang the bastards.
As Chicago's capitalists tried to put their labor problems behind them, a memorial to the anarchists became a shrine for revolutionaries. The elite's attempt to project an image of urban harmony to the world would not be easy.
Good morning, Zimbabwe, and welcome to Zimbabwe Daily. This is Sunday, the 2nd of May, 2021, and we are celebrating the May Day event with this online rally brought to you by Fozel. I hope your Sunday is blessed and that you were able to celebrate your day. Now, we're looking at that documentary from 1886. The struggle remains. Help me to welcome the guests who are in studio with me as we wait for other comrades to join in today's broadcast. Welcome. Please introduce yourselves and the union that you're coming from. And then I'm going to ask each one of you to come through with your solidarity messages that you've prepared for the online rally. So I'll come to you, Comrade More Blessing. Please greet the people.
Thank you. Hello, our viewers and listeners. Thank you very much for inviting us. I come from Amalgamated Road Teachers Union of Zimbabwe, and we are here with our speech for the May Day, and to say congratulations to all workers who are still resolute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, More Blessing. Over to you, Comrade Majongwe.
Hello?
Yes, Comrade Majongwe, please introduce yourself.
I can hardly hear you, Yvonne.
Okay. More Blessing, can you hear me well? Okay. Comrade Majongwe, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. How are you? Good morning.
I'm fine, thank you. You may introduce yourself and then go ahead with the PTUZ solidarity message on May Day.
Yeah, I am Raymond Majongwe, Secretary General of the Progressive Teachers Union of Zimbabwe. And we basically are saying to the workers of Zimbabwe, we need to unite, we need to focus on the challenges that we have, because nobody will liberate us from the challenges that we have. As teachers in Zimbabwe, we have noted that over the years, government has deliberately decided to make us enemies of the state. They've deliberately decided to politicize simple labor matters. they've decided to cherry pick on who becomes an ally. In this particular case, as unions, we have basically been divided by government. And government, even if you go to the papers today, you're going to discover that the Minister of Labor speaks of political unions. And these political unions are those that are deemed to have refused to have toe the political line put down by government. And that is a tragedy, because you can't then have unions that are in the armpit of government, unions that are basically commandeered and shepherded like goats and sheep into a particular crowd by government, who are told when to speak, how to speak, what language to use. And that in itself is a tragedy. So as far as we are concerned, we are simply saying unions have to declare to themselves and their members that their master is the cause that they stand for. Government is there to facilitate processes. Government should never dictate to unions. And this is why we are saying on a day like the Workers' Day, teachers must sit down, take stock of what is going on, and basically stand up and say, are we unions or we are just another rubber stamping idiots who are told what to do by government? The most important point here is when unions say they are being paid a wage that is below minimum wage, a wage that actually pulverizes them, a wage that pauperizes them, a wage that demeans, that doesn't take them anywhere, a wage that makes them fail to function. And if you are going to stand up and say, we were earning $550 at some point in October 2018, and can we go back to that particular trajectory? You are deemed anti-government, you are deemed an opposition activist, you are deemed an enemy of the state, and you are deemed somebody who is not patriotic. And as far as we are concerned, patriotism must actually start from the time you say to yourself, am I doing what is right for the citizens of Zimbabwe? And as PTUZ, we hold no shame, we are not scared, we are patriotic, we are loyal citizens, and all we are asking the Second Republic to realize is a worker who goes to work and pretends to work is a dangerous worker. A worker that is not happy is a dangerous worker. On the inauguration of the president, I want to believe the government invited the Shikiro to the National Sports Stadium. And we saw that person say, Vamunangagwa, vanhu vane nzara vanonetsa kutonga. The people he was referring to as vana vane nzara or vanhu vane nzara were Zimbabweans. And we are talking of teachers here who are patriotic, some who have served in this country and this government from 1980. People who have degrees, people who have qualified, people who have basically put everything they want in the line to say, I'm going to save my country. But what are these people earning? They're earning a salary which is less than a salary earned by an officer who graduated from any of these places last month. How do you justify and legitimize a situation where a professional who has been teaching for 40 years earns a salary that is not enough to buy 4 goats? Are we not ashamed? Are we not cursing? Even the Mbuyanyanda that we want to respect will not smile for such. So as far as we are concerned, we are simply saying on May Day, on Workers' Day, as teachers, we are bitter, we are happy, we are not happy, we are hate. We feel honestly disrespected by the Mnangagwa government. And we are simply saying to President Mnangagwa, when you came in, you said you were listening, President. When you came in, you said all your doors were open. We are knocking on your doors, they are remaining closed. We are coming to you and saying, let us engage, let us tango, let us dialogue, and the doors are closed. And we want to believe the reason is there are people out there who have gone out and said the PTUZ is pursuing a political agenda. What political agenda? In Zimbabwe, if you say anything, it is political. And all we are saying is we are not fighting government. We are fighting for and on behalf of the teachers that have deliberately been left in the cold. And we are saying respect your teachers, respect your headmasters, respect your professionals, and ultimately Zimbabwe will benefit. We have done a lot. We have come a long way. We have always been saying we can do more, but we can do more if you capacitate the teachers. We can do more if you capacitate the teachers, the headmasters, and everybody else who is in the education ministry. As far as we are concerned, the education system in Zimbabwe can actually be bettered. But that can only happen if government turns out and says, we are going to pay you what you are worth. We can't come and offer a service when we are going to be given second grade, second class citizens by government that we believe is a government that came in replacing a barbaric government that was led by Robert Mugabe, a government that was telling us that a government that failed to respect its workers, a government that failed to pay its workers a living wage. And the Second Republic came. So we don't expect them to operate at a negative of what we thought was negative. Because once that happens, then we are obviously going to stand up and say, no, 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 no. We can't go this route because we, as citizens, we have a right to stand up and say we demand better. And I think this is all what we are saying as the PTUZ. We are saying to government, listen to your workers, create an enabling labor environment where we can come up and say, this is the path that we are taking. In Zimbabwe, for civil servants, there is nothing called collective bargaining. All we know is collective begging. When people who masquerade as worker representatives go to government and they don't negotiate anything, you can't negotiate without a legal framework. The constitution is very clear. Trade unions are allowed to exist in this country. We need to be able to stand up and say, this is what we are worth. This is the legal framework, and that legal framework does not exist. So let us not be under any illusion. There is no collective bargaining in Zimbabwe. Convention 151 and Convention 154 are not ratified. So as far as we are concerned, we are very disappointed. We are simply saying to government, and we are saying to President Mnangagwa, let us talk, let us put the facts on the table, and this country will go far. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Majongwe, coming through from the PTUZ. Is the Secretary General speaking on the position of PTUZ on the condition of workers. We come to you, Mo Blessing Nyambara, the Gender Secretary for R2s. Please give us your solidarity message to the workers of Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Yvonne. Shinga, Mshandi Shinga.
Shinga,
Thank you.
as a worker.
Yeah, we can't just give a message without slogans, you know. So, comrades and members of R2s and the rest of the labor movement, inspired by this year's May Day theme, our hope lies in our struggles. And mindful of the current existing challenges faced by workers locally and across the globe, I say hearty congratulations on the occasion of this day. We celebrate the day in chains, but inspired by history of working class struggles. We are also resolute, renewing our hope to continuously agitate for change of the existing exploitative conditions workers, educators included, find themselves in. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the already volatile global economic structure, which has been ruined by capitalists, agreed, and workers who have been at the front line of fighting against the pandemic have been the worst affected economically. This has deepened inequalities between the rich and the poor, trashing all efforts of goal number one of eradicating poverty in this decade, as exposed by the UN Sustainable Development Goals and tragic to the biggest demographic group that has been the most fatalities are workers. As educators under the banner of R2s, we are agitated that despite our repeated calls for decent wages and improved conditions of services in our workstations and beyond, government has renegated on its duties and responsibilities to ensure the realization of the same. Educators can no longer afford basic needs as their meager salaries are insufficient. For even basic sustenance, we are even more disgusted that while we wallow in poverty, government ministers and bureaucrats are leading excessive and suspicious consumptive lives. This exposes their greed and insincerity in addressing our issues. As our tools, we call upon the government to address the issue of teacher welfare and the rest of the people. Central government must make funding available for the equitable access of basic social services, and this should be implemented on a universal basis. We, as part of the labor movement, as a matter of urgency, after consulting with the broader community, we are going to determine the minimum service level of basic social services. We also call upon the government to transform the workplace and necessitate skills development for educators. The government must provide an institutional framework for devising and implementing skills development for rural educators in the fields of ICT and civic education. Also, importantly, government must provide and incentivize leadership programs for young and female teachers so that our education system becomes competitive in the global space. There should be an
And Leader More Blessing seems to be stuck in the network wave. We'll try to reconnect with her. In the meantime, we will play this song by the comrade who is here, Comrade Ray Majongwe, which says Ngajinakire Tose.
Am I back?
Okay, you're back. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I'm very sorry. My network needs a login after a certain period of time.
I see. You may go ahead.
I'm sorry. So the COVID pandemic continues to pose health risks among educators in Zimbabwe. This is exacerbated by the indescribable shortage of PPEs in our schools. There has been rampant corruption by top government bureaucrats in the procurement of PPEs, and resources availed by various development agencies in the fight against COVID-19. This has grievous and fatal consequences on the health and educators, majority of whom have commodities. Also, disturbingly, educators are not sufficiently covered against other occupational hazards that has given the dilapidated infrastructure they operate under a susceptible to. The union calls upon government to commission an inquiry into the corruption involving the provision of PPEs and also work on necessitating legislation for OHS for educators. The union is going to launch a health and safety campaign, capacitate educators on health and safety on the workplace campaign, and most importantly, lobby government to devise an OHS manual for educators that should be enforceable. In the interim, R2s continues to work on its Safe Schools initiative that we started in 2017. And in ensuring holistic safety in schools for our educators and the children. R2's note with anger that NDS1, as the basis of government economic policy, continues to have a detrimental effect on educators' welfare and the provision of services. NDS, with its austerity measures, has not only failed to deliver for the poor, but has also made the already underemployed workers poorer. Growth is only in statistics without translating to the improvement of the material conditions and welfare of workers and in the general of the masses of our people in fictures. Disgusted by the corruption prevalent in this country, capture of the state, and influence on economic planning by the corrupt, politically connected elites, the union working collaboratively with other unions in the labor movement going to do an overall assessment of the NDS and in the impact it has had on the provision of education. Also, as workers, we are going to demand for a forum that strives for a new economic policies and, most importantly, develop a detailed policies around people-centered programs, focusing on collective ownership and uplifting in lives of ordinary people. The tripartite negotiating forum, TNF, has failed in this regard. As educators under R2s, we call for legislative reform and alignment of all public service labor laws to Section 65 of this Constitution. We argue how government is violating provisions of Section 65, specifically how it has consistently trampled on fair and safe labor practices and the allowance of decent wages. The government is also in violation of Section 65 in criminalizing unionism by unfairly targeting members of certain union, ours is included. This is very worrisome. And we will continuously agitate for government to honor its constitutional mandate and lobby all the relevant and constitutionally empowered bodies to play their oversight mandate. We also call upon government to expedite the process of establishing the Professional Teacher Council as a constitutional body to ensure the integrity of the profession, as it have a very serious bearing on the provision of quality of education in Zimbabwe. We call upon all workers to unite and fight against the oppression by greedy employers and challenge them to collaboratively work together in uplifting their material condition, for history has shown that they are on their own. Workers in their sectors must establish localized cooperative enterprises that will be collectively owned. This will be a good step in them owning the means of production and improving their livelihoods. This will also challenge the monopoly by greed mega corporations who have proved time and again that not only that they're exploitative, but they are extractive of the very resources that workers have. Lastly, comrades and friends, as we commemorate this day, we challenge every member of R2s and the broader labor movement to be an organizer for a unionism which is under attack in Zimbabwe. The labor movement must work on regaining its momentum that has over the years been lost due to the machinations of the state and private employers. Strong unionism in Zimbabwe will play a very cogent role in the path towards a Zimbabwe that is developmental and democratic, where all rights will be respected and there will be a commonwealth for all who live and work in for Zimbabwe. As we all remain vigilant in the fight against COVID-19, as we commemorate this momentous day, Shinga Mshandi Shinga, Viva R2s, Viva! Viva working class, Viva! Amandla! Ah, shit.
Kana mari kapira kana ichiwane chikwa chikapira kana chowane kana mari kapira kana ichiwane chikwa chikapira kana chowane takapira nauwane iko kuti nyika yedu ibudirire.
ndiko kuti Zimbabwe ikurumire, ndiko kuti nyika yedu ibudirire, ndiko kuti Zimbabwe ikurumire.
Kana zvikaoma, kana zvikanda, kana zvikaoma here, kana zvikanda, mafuta akapera, kana owanikwa, shuga ikapera, kana yowanikwa, shuga ikapera here, kana yowanikwa.
We are coming to you live on Zimbabwe Daily as we bring you the May Day online rally coming through from the Federation of Educators in Zimbabwe. I hope you're joining us. Thank you so much, Manuel Nyakonda. Thank you, Tekmo Mhlanga, Maureen Sigauke, Roka van de Bovers, Harrison Mudzori. We greet you this morning. Thanks to all of you who are joining us. We've just had solidarity speeches from Mo Blessing Nyambara of the Amalgamated Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe. And we had also from Comrade Raymond Majongwe, the Secretary General for the Progressive Teachers Union in Zimbabwe. Vashandi muri kuzoona sei muri kwa muri? How are the working conditions? Initially, we started by broadcasting that documentary of 1886, looking at the different circumstances that workers had to go through in order to get to a particular dispensation. And even today, decades later, centuries even, we still talk about slave wages. Now, what does that mean when the labor force is not happy? More so our teachers, when they are not at the levels that they're expecting to be. What does it then mean to our country? Raymond Majongwe, ngazi na kiritose.
Kana mari ikapera, kana ichiwanikwa, chingwa chikapinda, kana chowanikwa, kana mari ikapera, kana ichiwanikwa, chingwa chikapera.
All right, so we've been trying to connect with the other comrades, but unfortunately the network is letting them down. We are hopeful to receive a message coming in from one of the labor movement. But all the same, tell us your own experiences. Munofunga kuti chii chinoda kuitwa kuti Zimbabwe yedu imire zvakanaka so that the labor force is in good space. Somebody talked about a broken down social contract. Once the teachers of Zimbabwe unite, for Zero is the platform of that unity. Indeed.
Uitapera
Excellent work. So now we cross over to Comrade Wilson Makanyaire coming through with the solidarity message from Peru's. So we've been able to get an audio from him. So we're just going to share that. And
Thank you. Thank you very much. My appreciation to all workers in Zimbabwe, giving important reference to teachers in Zimbabwe in particular. I want to appreciate the effort of celebrating the May Day, but to be very true, workers in Zimbabwe have got nothing to celebrate. If need be, all we need to celebrate is exploitation by government, exploitation by the employer. This is what we need to celebrate. Giving reference to teachers in particular, 540 as a salary was insufficient for teachers as a salary. But the powers that be saw it necessary to reduce it to far below $200, which is indeed a shame. However, if teachers and workers in Zimbabwe at large, we have got nothing to lose but our chains. All we need to do is to remain focused. All we need to do is to think brilliance. All we need to do is to remain a family of workers in Zimbabwe. What we need to do now and as a way forward is to define our path, is to really know who our enemy is. And in this case, our enemy is the employer. I want to appreciate this moment in time where teachers are united together as one force, trying to recognize, trying to realize what are we worth as teachers, what are we worth as workers in Zimbabwe. We have suffered enough, but we will not lose focus. We have suffered enough in the hands of the employer, but we remain teachers. We are not asking for too much from the employer. All we want is good working conditions. All we want is equality among the civil service. Discrimination being shown by employer today is a shame. Discrimination being shown by employer today is a provocation to us. The incapacitation given teachers at large in the country is a need for concern. Today, as we speak, teachers can't afford to go for work. Today, as we speak, teachers can't afford a decent meal. Today, as we speak, teachers can't afford even to send their children to the various schools. And we are sending a message to the employer, which is supposed to be very clear. Enough is enough. Until the government realizes that we are important, incapacitation of teachers is going to continue. Irrespective of the fact that we are supposed to be ambassadors of education, but we've got families to look after. All what we demand today is a salary that can afford us our day-to-day living. Besides salary, we've got other conditions as workers in Zimbabwe, as teachers in Zimbabwe that we are supposed to look at. Teacher-people ratio is beyond our reach. Houses teachers are living are almost the Smith regime type of houses. The type of life we are living today is equal to the primitive Homo sapien type of life we are living today. And as we celebrate May Day today, it is in agony that we think about teachers as a role model of a country. we are no longer role models of this country. We are being exploited. We are being used for free. Yet we are supposed to carry the light of Zimbabwe ahead. My message today to teachers: remain focused and be united. If we speak of incapacitation, indeed you are incapacitated. Don't go for work. It is this voice, a united voice of teachers, that will awaken the employer and possibly give time to the employer to look into our demands. Teachers who are being exploited, teachers who are being used for free. Indeed, this discrimination being shown by government, it's a clear indication that we are no longer part of the public service. We are treated as second class in our own country. Our enemy in Zimbabwe is politics. Teachers must know. The politics of the land is exploiting us. The politics of the land is giving us disadvantages. The politics of the land is discriminating against a teacher. And what are we supposed to do in this light? As teachers, we are supposed to unite, focus into how this country is supposed to be run, put our input on how this country is supposed to be run, put our energies on how this country is supposed to be run. Until we afford to define these elements, I foresee workers in Zimbabwe, teachers in Zimbabwe suffering continuously happening. All we need to do now is to put our tools down, take the struggle into our hands, reshape our focus, and rethink who actually our enemy is. My experience as the president of PEUs have clearly shown me that only the politics of the land is supposed to be corrected. We are not enemies of state. We are not enemies of government. We are enemies of the politics of the land. It is the politics of the land that have decided to exploit teachers, that have decided to discriminate teachers, that has decided at large to underpay teachers in a way to make us conform to the politics of the land. But what they are saying to the politicians, we are professionals, we are teachers. We demand only what we are worth. Put aside the politics of the land and don't mistreat us to that extent. That you don't hold guns, that we've got no pistols, is not passport for the employer to discriminate us. At any rate, we are the torch of this country. We are the light of this country. We are supposed to lead this country. We are supposed to educate this country. We are supposed to empower this country. And today, as we celebrate the May Day, teachers are in agony. Teachers are disappointed, and we continue to be incapacitated, and we continue to demand what we are worth. In this regard, ladies and gentlemen, I want to implore to everybody, a worker in Zimbabwe, that we must join hands and fight together as one family and demand that we are worth and demand that we are supposed to be given what is worth to us. I thank you.
Excellent. That was the voice of Wilson Makanaire from the Professional Educators Union of Zimbabwe, and he is saying that educators are equally important. What do you think? Thank you so much to all of you who have come through with your comments and your contributions. This has been the May Day online rally. Now I'll ask the comrades who are here to just give you parting shots as we end our online rally. Over to you, more blessing.
Thank you, Yvonne, and thank you for having me here. I think we can all agree that the time for complacence is long gone. It has passed and it belongs to another era. The silence on violence against labor activists has been exposed now. It is the time for stronger action. That's why today we are not scared to keep on fighting for our rights and those of our learners. And to Fozel, I say, thank you very much, comrades, for coming up with this unity for teachers. And we hope we are going to win this battle as teachers. And to each and every teacher out there, I say, nothing for you without you. So let's unite and work together as teachers. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, More Blessing Nyambara, the Gender Secretary for R2s. Over to you, Comrade Majongwe. Comrade Majongwe, your microphone, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. We cannot hear you. Are you able to unmute? You've unmuted. Yeah, but we still cannot hear you. Do you have something that you've attached to your gadget? Oh no. No, we can't hear you. What happened to the audio? What happened to the sound? No, we still cannot hear you. No, we can't. We can't hear you. We can't hear you at all. At all. There's no sound coming from your device. No, we still can't hear you. I think you may need to actually.
You can go and audit Audio Aveta.
We can't hear you at all. Your audio, there's something wrong. You can hear us, but we cannot hear you. Yeah, I'm saying that I cannot even hear you at all. You have muted your microphone now, but even when you unmuted it, we could not hear you at all. Oh no, we can't hear you. Okay, comrade, we can't hear you at all. Do you mind dropping the line and maybe coming back in? It could be just a technical something on your device. We wait to hear from Comrade Majongwe there. So we've had the privilege of having members coming under the banner of Fewuz, and thank you so much to all of you who have come through. Harrison Mudzuri, you say the predatory employer of teachers thrives by causing division, disharmony, and cannibalism among teacher unions. The more the government tries to divide teachers, the more teachers commit to unity and togetherness. Right, Comrade Majongwe has rejoined. Let's see if his problem has been solved. Because I could... Comrade, can you say something? Oh no, something actually absolutely wrong has gone with your device because we cannot even hear a word or a sound from you. Can you unmute yourself? Oh no. Are you able to send an audio on WhatsApp so that we can hear your parting shots? And yeah, because we really want to hear what you needed to say there. So you can send your audio on WhatsApp. We can't hear. We can't hear. All right, so we cannot hear Comrade Majongwe there, but hopefully he'll be able to send through his audio so that we get to hear what he had to say. So this has been the May Day online rally brought to you by FOZEL, the Federation of Zimbabwe Educators Union. So, Madam More Blessing, since you're here, can you tell us something about FOZEL? What do we need to know about FOZEL? You may unmute yourself.
Okay. As teacher unions, we have decided to come together and have one voice with our grievances. So this FOZAO is a unity amongst teacher unions to include PTUZ and the others 4 unions. So we came together and formed FOZAO so that this issue of divide and rule must not have a space in our sector. We decided to move those issues which affect educators all together. Yes, we have other unions who decided not to join, but still we are working on coming them on board so that we as teachers, we have one board which will run and represent teachers' needs and to the government as one board. And nobody will go to PTUZ and try to turn them, or to any other union and try to turn them against each other, because when we are one, when you go to Raymond Majongwe and ask him, what he's going to tell you is exactly what you are going to get from Obed, and is exactly what you are going to get from Makanyari. So we decided to be one board which represents teacher needs. Yeah.
Right. Comrade Majongwe, can you say something? Oh no. Oh no. Oh my God. We cannot hear you. We would have loved so much to hear your parting shots, Comrade Majongwe, but because of the technical challenges, not sure what's going on there. We may have to conclude this conversation. So, Comrade Mo Blessing Nyambara was just telling us a little bit about FOZAO, the platform that teacher unions have created to come together so that they amplify their voices under one banner. Thank you so much, FOZAO, for having this particular online May Day rally. Thank you, Zimbabwe, for tuning in as we spoke and heard from the worker unions. They are saying we want a living wage. We want money so that we're able to take care of our families. My name is Yvonne Muchaka, and I've been your moderator on this particular online rally. May you have a wonderful rest of day.
Them loot, oh them loot Zimbabwe dry. Them loot, oh how the people die. Them loot, no medication in hospitals. Them loot, schools have no books. Them loot, the ghetto youth have no jobs. Them loot, Lord of mercy. Them loot, oh them loot Zimbabwe dry. Lord of mercy, God have mercy. Them loot, oh, while the people die, while the people cry. Vanoba, zvipatara zvisina mushonga vachiba. Vanoba, zvikoro zvisina mabhuku vanoba. Vanoba, vechidiki vachishaya mabasa vanoba. Kana mvura hakuna vanoba. Lord of mercy, Lord of mercy. Masibala